Hallo, heute habe ich zwei ganz besondere Gäste und einen weit entfernten Gast. Heute spreche ich mit Linda Tellington-Jones und mit Katja Krauß, und Katja hat den Kontakt hergestellt. Ich freue mich sehr, sehr, sehr darauf, Linda in diesem Podcast begrüßen zu können. Sie ist die Mutter der Tellington-TTOUCH Methode. Ihr Leben hat angefangen mit den Pferden und sie hat es weitergetragen auch zu den Hunden und zu anderen Tieren, so dass wir davon profitieren können. Und Katja ist eine der weltweit, ich glaube, nur an die 30 Instruktorinnen, die dieses Wissen in der Art weitergeben. Von daher freue ich mich sehr, sehr, sehr heute auf diesen Podcast. Hallo Linda und hallo Katja, schön, dass ihr da seid.
Hi, Susanne. Katja.
Hallo Susanne, schön, dass wir uns jetzt hier treffen können.
Ja, also ich freue mich total und also wir haben uns hier jetzt für alle, die hier zuhören oder auch zuschauen, wir haben uns darauf geeinigt, dass ich in Deutsch rede und dass Linda in Englisch antwortet. Für alle vielleicht eine kleine Herausforderung oder auch eine nette Abwechslung. Und mir ist so eine Frage, mit der ich starten möchte. Linda, was denkst du denn, ist so die größte Herausforderung für die Menschen, die Hunde besitzen in der heutigen Zeit, die ja sehr schnelllebig ist? Die größte Herausforderung.
Wel, het is zo interessant, Susanne. Wel, ik heb gestern een ander interview gemaakt en ik heb gedacht wie ik met Tier mijn leven aangevangen heb. Oh, sorry, in English.
You can talk
Sorry.
in English, but you
So
can talk.
I was thinking yesterday how my life with animals started. And my first picture of me with an animal is with our dog sitting on the porch in the Northwest Territories of Canada and changing bacon with my dog. I got one bite, my dog got one bite. And that, we grew up with animals. When I was 6, I had another experience with a dog that was so interesting. And that is that my mother had called me to come in and I didn't want to come in. And so I ran away and she came down the porch after me and and wanted to put me over her knee to spank me. And our family dog nipped her in the butt.
Ah,
And my mother didn't spank me. The reason I tell these stories is that we grew up with dogs, just being part of the family. And when I had a ranch in Canada as an adult, my first husband and I bred Great Danes. And the thing is, we didn't train dogs in those days. I mean, today, think what dogs have to do. They have to go in the city. They have to go in the cars. Many of them have to go. Our dog was trained, so he would go on trains with us or planes, and they have to be very adaptable. And the thing that, for me, what I find really hard is that because dogs have to be in the city on leash as law all the time, how can we give them back to them? How can we work with them from the heart? Because when we just always demand that they're right there beside us, they sit and wait. Let's give them something back. And this is why I am so thrilled to teach and share Tellington-TTOUCH and what Katja does to the clicker world, bringing something besides just giving food to the dog for a reward, because it's completely different. This concept that our dogs want to be with us when we give these really simple little, just moving just the tissue, and it's 1 1/4 circles. And the reason, like for years, Suzanne, I could not understand because we had thousands of case studies showing that we could release fear in our dogs or give them more trust and more willingness to work with us with these simple 1 1/4 circles, but we didn't understand what was going on. And thanks to this new new since the 1970s concept of energy from quantum science, we know that every thought we have, every thought we have, every feeling, every emotion, and every belief that we have actually is energy and makes a difference. And I have to tell you, when we got our Westie in, I think it was 2002, she was brought to us at 6 months old. And in the days, we didn't have any possibility in Hawaii of getting a rescue dog of a small breed that we wanted. And so we had this, and we were told when the breeder brought our Westie to us, flew to the island to bring her, we were told that don't ever let her off leash or around a cat because she will kill a cat. We're talking about a 6 month old puppy. I mean, this is a belief. And with that dog, we could go anywhere with her off leash. Why? Because she wanted to be with us. Just this heart to heart connection that develops when you work on your dog in gentle ways with this 1 1/4 circle. And the magic, we never understood. How come? Why is this 1 1/4 so important? Mm. And we finally discovered this is this spiral, magical, sacred spiral circle that is in all of nature. It's in our DNA. It's in everything. And we are connecting at a soul to soul level with this 1 1/4 circle. There's magic that happens that is just incredible. And to me, it's like, okay, wait a minute. It's very light that we do this with a dog. I mean, it's like if I would take my finger and move my skin on my eyelid, and you might just try this and see how light that is. That's nothing, right? It's not a pressure. So the thing is, what we realize, and what I want you to think about, and why I think this is so important to do with our dogs, is the fact that it's like a message, this 1 1/4 circle movement on your dog, a light connection, is like a message. It's a message of connection, and it's a cell to cell connection. And what do I mean by cell? When I started talking about this, like more than 20 years ago, about cells, everybody thought, Linda's really lost it now. Yeah, she could do great things with animals, but man, she's crazy. And now, if you just Google cellular intelligence, you will absolutely get so much information that science, it is deep, deep science. And what's so interesting, I think, for our dog owners, our dog lovers, our dog parents, or if you're a trainer, you're this dog that means so much in your life. What's important to know is that we can make that really special connection. And when we move the skin in our dogs in this light 1 1/4 circles, that it actually affects us also. It's not just the dog. And it's like taking a key, this 1 1/4 circle, it's like a key that opens the door to enter this phenomenal intelligence in our bodies, in every cell in our body. Just think about it. How do you think we see? How is it that our blood flows? It's not us. And although there are tens of thousands of functions of cells scientifically known and understood, there's one thing that is not understood in science. And in one of the latest books on the subject of cellular intelligence, it's recognized that we don't know what's behind it. How come that is? And so it's being called in some of these books as command central. It's like the source, it's the universal intelligence that's in us, it's in our dogs. And when we just reach out and work with a smile on our lips and an open heart, we can make such a difference with our connection to our dogs and to ourselves. So, I'm very excited that Katja is bringing this concept of T-Touch to a world of dog trainers that are very successful with clicker, but you don't make a connection when you're always giving the food. It's not the same.
So, ich denke manchmal, dass die Menschen dazu so ein Stück mehr connected mit sich selbst auch sein sollten oder dürfen. Und um diese Connection auch mit dem Hund herzustellen, siehst du das als, ja, Spezialität von Tellington-TTOUCH, dass du sagst, hier kann der Mensch auch lernen, mehr mit sich selbst connected zu sein?
Ja, es kommt nicht in Frage. This
Du
is
kannst
so.
in Englisch antworten.
Oh, sorry. It's hard to switch back. So the thing is, what we have discovered is that we have what we call three magic T-touches. And when you do it to yourself, you connect your dog. For instance, if you have a dog that's really not focused, not listening, and you do this heart hug, which is just, I'll show you all how to do it because, or if you're upset, if you're upset and your dog is doing something that you don't want them to do,
Mhm.
we have to, if we want to make an impact on that dog and get them to listen, we have to be grounded and actually calm in ourselves. So how do you do that if you're like afraid you're going to fail or really frustrated because that dog is not listening? So we call it in Deutsch Herzunnäherung, a heart hug.
Mhm.
And the way you do it, it has some pieces to it. You imagine on the wall there's a clock, the the old-fashioned kind of clock, the fact that was round with numbers on it. It won't work with a digital clock. So you take that imaginary clock and you put it right here, right on your chest,
Mhm.
right? And then you just think, wait a minute, okay, so I have this clock and I look from the outside. And on this imaginary clock, you have the number 6 toward the ground, right?
Mhm.
You just think, okay, toward this shoulder, that's my 9, my 12 toward the chin, and my 3 toward this left shoulder. Now, why do I, that's obvious. Why do I go to that trouble to say it? Because if you're upset and want to ground yourself and be clear with your animals, you have to be calm. And when you put the numbers, these imaginary numbers, anything to do with numbers or methods gets us logic. We can think logically. And when we do, it helps to calm us. Now, the thing is, by imagining this clock, that imagine activates our right brain. Our left brain is numbers, logic. We need that to be here on Zoom.
Mhm.
And the right brain, though, that's important for us to be connected with everything. And the right brain is responsible for our feeling. And that's really important because after COVID, so many people lost the feeling to themselves, to our fellow beings, to our families. And so we activate by imagining the clock. Anything to do with imagination activates feeling, creativity. This is one of the reasons I have the flowers behind me because just imagining these flowers and anything to do with art activates the creative side. And why you have this beautiful nature behind, and Katja has, I don't know what that is, Katja, behind you. Looks like the inside of a dog's mouth.
It's
Big beach.
no, it's a beach.
It's a beach. Wow, what an interesting beach. Oh, now I see. I just saw the teeth. Look, get back to the like right brain, responsible creativity, feeling, our intuition, and our compassion. And the compassion is so important. Now, what that does, now we've got this imaginary clock. Now, just with the lightest contact, catch the skin. And you can do it with your fingers like this, just like from 6 and a little arc up to the 9, up to 12, over to 3 and to 6, and almost back up to 9. Just 1 1/4. And if you put your hand very lightly, just barely, just able to move the skin.
Oh,
Keep that 1/4, right. And again,
I
from
was a little
6
bit nervous, I think.
around the face of the clock, almost back up to 9. Take a nice deep breath, smile, and think of something for which you are very grateful. And if you are in a state of like anxiety or just frustration or, wow, you can't settle, you can't focus. We want our dogs to focus, but we can't focus. 1.25, just 2 or 3 times, very lightly. And why that's effective is it brings us out of that state of anxiety controlled by the primitive part of our brain, which is important for fear, but not in these moments. And it activates the forebrain. What does that mean as dog people? It means that it brings us from that state of the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, fear that we can't get our dogs to do what we want, or fear that they're going to be in trouble and, have a problem. And it takes us to be able to think, and it takes us into the parasympathetic. That's a state from which we can think and figure things out and be calm and be grounded. And you know how there are some dog people that you know of who the dogs just want to be with them. And they're the people who are grounded and they know what they need and they have a special connection. And when you're in that calm, quiet, grounded state of the parasympathetic, which is we can get to with this, the dogs want to be with us. It's a whole different concept. And you can put yourself there very quickly with our heart hug. And so if you're working with any kind of a situation where you think, oh, wow, I don't know if I'm going to be able to manage this, take these few moments and just move gently in a circle. Now, I showed you to go to the right, clockwise, but some of you might prefer the other way. So you should just try it. What feels best to you? It's not important what it is. It's whatever feels best. And it could change from time to time.
Das ist beim Haartag so, bei der Herzumarmung. Bei den anderen machen wir meistens schon im Uhrzeigersinn.
Ja.
Ich dachte, das ist immer vorgegeben, dass man im Uhrzeigersinn, aber es kommt wirklich darauf an, dass man in sich reinfühlt und dass man spürt, was fühlt sich für mich denn besser an? Ist es nach rechts oder nach links?
Ja.
Mhm.
Ja. Und das ist wichtig, das zu ausprobieren. Was ist für dich am besten? What's best for you?
Ich probiere es gerade aus.
Ja, probier aus.
Ja, aber es ist tatsächlich nach rechts besser. Nach links fühlt sich so ein bisschen an, als würde ich was umdrehen. Ist sehr interessant. Also so aus meiner Praxis habe ich manchmal das Gefühl, dass bevor man die Menschen reinschickt, zu sagen, trainier mit deinem Hund, trainier vielleicht besser mal so ein bisschen mit dir selbst oder mit einem anderen Menschen, der dir Feedback geben kann. Wie fühlt sich das denn tatsächlich an? Und während ich jetzt rede, denke ich, oder vielleicht ist es auch ganz gut, mit dem Hund zu üben und erst im Außen zu üben. Ihr beide, was denkt ihr da? Ist es besser, mit dem Hund anfangen zu üben oder brauche ich erstmal so dieses Gefühl für mich? Was fühlt sich für mich besser an? Wo fühle ich mich wohler? Oder dass ich mir ein Feedback von einem anderen Menschen hole?
Well, overlegen, was ist die logische Antwort? What's the logical answer to that? That we calm ourselves, right? First. And it only takes moments. I mean, a couple of minutes, especially when you practice this and you find how quickly you can be calm. Fascinating. Katja, what's your experience in your classes that you're teaching?
Im Hintergrund bellt es jetzt immer mal. Das ist der Welpe,
Also
der
man
jetzt
hört
unbedingt
nichts.
auch bellen muss. Deswegen muss ich mich sehr konzentrieren, euch zu verstehen. Aber ihr hört Ihr hört den Welpen zum Glück nicht.
Nee.
Okay. Also meine Erfahrung ist auch, dass man das gar nicht so pauschal beantworten kann, sondern dass man immer wieder auch schauen muss, was für genau dieses Mensch-Hundeteam das Richtige ist. Und das kann ich für denjenigen gar nicht beantworten, sondern der muss das tatsächlich für sich auch manchmal auch ausprobieren.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we have many teachers who actually start their classes with the heart hug
Ja,
because you do this in a room. You bring a group of dogs in a room. The way I teach, we'll have like maybe 15 dogs in the room with their person. And of course, they're looking around, they're not settled. And if you just start this, what happens in like 2 or 3 minutes, the dogs get calm. And it's so interesting. And what's important in this is that you smile with it. It's a practice smile. Why? Because the smile activates our feel good hormones, the serotonin. And when we smile, it's interesting. I'm following a yoga teacher on Zoom, and I love his smile session with qigong, not yoga, qigong. And what he says, what made so much sense to me, because we've been teaching this for years, to smile just lightly, not a big smile, but when you do, you activate like 80 different hormones in the body, and that starts to bring us into the body so that we can be present in this way. The other thing that's important is it has to be very light, because if you press hard and you feel your heart, that's not a good feeling. And a really big study from like 2,000 people from the American Massage Association showed that when you make a light contact with the body, you get the most oxytocin activated. And oxytocin is being called now by many the trust hormone. So if you can activate with these light T-touches with your dogs and just give them a sense of the outline of their body, it's a very different connection. I call it a heart to heart, cell to cell, and soul to soul connection. And that's what I find we can get with our dogs, is this soul connection.
Mhm.
und ich glaube schon, dass das ist, was man immer wieder merkt, wenn Menschen sich wirklich ein bisschen intensiver mit Tellington beschäftigt haben. Das habe ich auch das Feedback von Menschen bekommen, die seit 30, 40 Jahren Hunde haben. Die sagen, sie haben wirklich nochmal eine andere Beziehung danach. Also sie bekommen eine tiefere Ebene, als sie davor hatten.
Mhm.
Das kann man sich wirklich, also ich konnte mir das auch nicht vorstellen, weil ich habe auch gedacht, als ich die Ausbildung angefangen habe, na ja, also meine Hunde noch mehr Beziehung geht eigentlich gar nicht. Aber inzwischen weiß ich, dass es geht. Und dass es eigentlich fast von Tag zu Tag sogar noch intensiver wird. Also es ist wirklich, man kann das nicht beschreiben, sondern es ist was man wirklich dann fühlt, dass man plötzlich auf einer ganz anderen Ebene verbunden ist.
Mhm. Also ich hatte vor 25 Jahren meinen ersten Kurs in T-Touch gemacht.
Ja.
Und ich fand damals, dass das sehr technisch ist. Also das war ein Wochenende, wo uns mehrere Touches vermittelt wurden. Und ich fand das sehr technisch. Also welchen T-Touch wende ich wo an und wie mache ich den Eineinviertel-Kreis und sowas. Und dann habe ich so gedacht, hm, weiß ich jetzt auch nicht, was die Linda Tellington-Jones sich dabei gedacht hat, weil ich konnte diese Technik nicht in ein Gefühl übertragen. Und das hat mir damals in dem Seminar tatsächlich gefehlt. Also, da- dass, ähm, dass das eigentlich diese Verbindung ist, diese Connection, die ich dadurch herstelle und gar nicht dieser Eineinviertel-Kreis. Also ich dachte, ich muss viele T-Touches lernen für unterschiedliche Zwecke.
Und
Und
das wichtig, dass du das sagst. Ne? Und was ich möchte sagen, und
du
Katja,
kannst
das,
in Englisch reden, wenn du magst.
sorry. Yeah, the thing is, it's really good that you say that, because I think we have to be careful to know it's the basic 1 1/4 circle. It doesn't matter which part of your hand you use. That basic 1 1/4 circle, however you can do that, however you can move the skin, makes this special connection. And we have to talk about that because you don't necessarily feel it in the beginning. But let me give you an example.
Mhm.
Well, actually, I don't want to interrupt you because I want to hear more about, actually, before I tell this about you.
Okay. Wieder in Deutsch denken. Ähm, also ich fand das sehr technisch und fand aber diese Körperberührung, ich bin ein sehr körperlicher Mensch und ich fand diese Verbindung, ich habe da immer wieder dran gearbeitet, wie kann ich diese Verbindung herstellen, habe dann aber erstmal T-Touches nicht weiter verfolgt, weil ich das sehr technisch fand. Und was ich dann ausprobiert hatte, ist, dass ich die Hand einfach, it's not a dog, but it's, wenn das hier der Oberschenkel zum Beispiel ist vom Hund, ja, dass ich die Hand hier ran gemacht habe und dass ich ausprobiert habe, wenn ich ein bisschen drücke, wie viel gibt der Hund denn dann von seinem Gewicht ab? Ja, also ich halte hier den Hund ein bisschen an dem Oberschenkel und wenn ich loslasse, dann muss er sich wieder selbst halten. Und das fand ich eine total geniale Verbindung schon für mich. Ja, weil ich gemerkt habe, es hat was mit Nähe und mit Distanz zu tun. Und ich kann das nur richtig gut machen, wenn ich das auch fühle, was bei dem Hund gerade ist. Und das war so mein Einstieg dann für mich, was ich selbst ausprobiert hatte, ähm, ja, mit dieser Connection, mit dieser Verbindung herzustellen.
Yeah, and this is interessant. Katja, we should um, consider, like, how do we make it so that you begin to understand that through these, I mean, literally thousands and thousands of case studies, that we find you can change the behavior in minutes. And I think that's important in a class to say. It's not, don't worry about which part of the hand or which t-shirt you use with. What is easy for you? How can you easily just get your hands on that dog to gently move the hair, the coat, or the skin? And then you can start worrying about the various T-touches. So Suzanne, I appreciate that. I think that's important, Katja, because we can get so into the techniques. You see, what's really interesting to me is for years, I kept asking myself, wait a minute, how come we have thousands of cases where people had pain in their body and they were able to use this simple light touch on themselves and reduce the pain, or have real deep fear, like ungrounded fears, and be able in one session with themselves to release that fear, and with their dogs the same way. I want to give you just one of my favorite stories was sent to me in an email last year, actually, and somebody had listened to one of my Sunday Zooms that I often give on a Sunday. And her friend had sent a 9-month-old Great Dane puppy to her to take care of for the weekend. And she had a young Cocker Spaniel female, and the puppy wouldn't leave her dog alone. I mean, you know how puppies can be at 9 months. And of course, he was a male. And so really interested. And she was thinking, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to try this ear thing that she saw me do on the Zoom. Just quietly do the ears, just this little circle and a slide on the ears of the dog. And I always say, be careful, like think of the ear of the dog as like a rose petal. You don't squeeze it. You can make these little circles and slides. And she did it. She said, She just brought the dog over and sat him down and did this on both ears. And he went over and lay down and he was quiet like the whole weekend. He could start thinking then. I mean, that is such a simple thing. I mean, she didn't go to a class, she didn't learn it, she just heard me say it. And that is why I think this is really helpful, Susanna, to hear that, because we don't want to be overcome by the techniques. And yet, you know, what I said about the heart hug, all this technical thing, imagine, and the logic and the right and left brain, that is really useful information to know for some. And for others, they don't care, they just want to do it. But I find more and more people who come to this work over the years, they really want to know what's behind it. You know, it's interesting.
Now I want to know what's behind it.
Well, let me show you something. This is this book. It's one of my favorite books. It's a new book. It's called The New Medicine. And it starts off with a story that it was like sometime in the 1800s, there were two researchers who were working in a laboratory. One was working on the research on human tissue and the other on plant tissue, on cells. And they would meet up at night, and what they discovered in their discussions is that at the nucleus of the cell, it was the same, whether it's plants or animals. And this concept that we're all the same at the cellular level. It's absolutely fascinating. And the fact that when we realize some of these things, and we begin to realize and respect the fact that, wow, we're walking miracles. This is a miracle that I can feel, see, touch. You don't have to know any more than that to know that every cell in our body knows its function in the body. That's what started me on the search for the understanding of cellular intelligence in 1976, when I read this in a book by a Nobel Prize winner, Sir Charles Sherrington, and it completely changed my approach to life and to the body. Wow, this is a miracle. You know, our dogs are miracles. And when we start to see them like this, it's interesting. So that's my thing. I want to talk to, actually, Katja, I want to hear what you have to say about all of this. And then I want to talk about the power and the role of energy in this work, in our lives.
Ich kann mich Linda nur anschließen. Es ist wirklich, wenn man es runterbricht und darüber nachdenkt, dass wir ja nur aus diesen winzigen kleinen Zellen bestehen und dass das alles so gut funktioniert, dann kann man immer nur voller Hochachtung eigentlich jedes Geschöpf nur anschauen und einfach nur bewundern, ja, dass das alles so harmonisch dann doch irgendwie funktioniert. Eine gute Freundin von mir, die Dr. Daniela Zur, die sagt auch immer, weil die ist Tierärztin und wird natürlich viel wegen irgendwelchen Krankheiten angesprochen. Und sie sagt, denk mal dran, wie viel funktioniert von diesem Körper. Also wir konzentrieren uns häufig auf irgendwas, was nicht gut funktioniert. Und dabei, dass dieser Körper trotzdem all das noch leistet, was er dann leistet, ist jedes Mal ein wirkliches Wunder. Kann man gar nicht anders sagen. Ja.
Das ist ein Wunder. Ja.
Ja, und also vielleicht noch so dieses, dass wir ja auch in irgendeiner Art und Weise miteinander verbunden sind. Also eigentlich mit allem und mit allen und somit natürlich auch mit unserem Hund. Also die Verbindung ist ja sowieso da.
Ja.
Aufgrund der Natur oder was Natur halt einfach ist.
Ja, wenn man das physikalisch sieht, also wenn man das ganz hochwissenschaftlich betrachtet, ist es auch ganz logisch. Ich sage dann immer, wenn mich Leute so fragend anschauen, also für einen Albert Einstein hat das schon immer Sinn ergeben, aber für uns erschließt sich das manchmal etwas schwer, aber so ist es. Genau so, wie du es gerade gesagt hast, ja.
Also was ich daran interessant finde, ist, dass wir auf der einen Seite die hochwissenschaftliche Seite haben, also die Quantenphysik, die da an der Stelle spricht, und auf der anderen Seite hatten wir so diese sehr spirituelle Ebene, die sagt, ja, wir sind alle verbunden und wir sind alle eins, und dass diese eigentlich doch sehr, sehr weit auseinanderliegenden Pole sich inzwischen annähern und also zum Verstehen ist es vielleicht manchmal wirklich ein bisschen schwierig, wenn man es erklärt, und es ist vielleicht einfach auch so, wenn ich es nicht verstehe, mich einfach drauf einzulassen und mal hinzuspüren. Wie ist das denn, verbunden sein?
Und es ist interessant, es gibt ein Buch, das hat die gleichen, there's a book that has the
Yeah,
same,
you can talk in English.
same title in English and German that gives you an idea behind some of the research behind it. It's written by Lynn McTaggart, and it's called The Intention Experiment in English. Und ich glaube, es ist die Intention Experiment, oder, Katja?
Das kann ich nicht, die Titel habe ich immer nicht so auf dem Schirm.
Yeah, but ich glaube, it's the same. It's the same.
Kann sein.
And the thing is, it tells you there, you can open the book kind of anywhere, and it tells you all these studies that show that our effects of our thinking on a machine, even on an experiment, have an effect. And that understanding is thanks to quantum science now. And one of the issues that I think is, for me, really important as part of our work of the Tellington-TTOUCH, one is this concept of forgiveness. Because this idea that we have to dominate our animals, that you have to correct them when they make a mistake. At the basis of this work is the idea we don't want to correct for something that's a mistake. We want to be able to show a dog what it is that we need from them. And we can affect them. If you've got a dog who doesn't want to be touched or, is really afraid, maybe it's a rescue, for instance, that you can be on the outside of a kennel and you can just start doing these little 1.25 circles in the air. And we have so many cases, Suzanne, that show that dog will often then, instead of being glued against the wall, like in fear, start to relax, start to lick and blink. And we watch for the signs, and we can affect them just by doing the same thing, by turning our head away, not staring at them there, but turning a little so the dog can get a sense of us without, us focusing on them. And we have so many people who rescue dogs who are able to work with dogs like this and make a huge difference just from what we call air T-touch. And the thing is, this is no longer woo-woo, it's science. And there's so many studies that show that we can affect something. You don't even have to be, you can sit here listening to all of us, all of you who are here, and just imagine that you're doing these little 1.25 light circles on your dog. And as you're doing this, as you're just hearing us and talking to us, and it can have an effect. That's what's really exciting to me. And I started to talk about this concept of forgiveness because we think, oh yeah, the dog makes a mistake. I don't even want to go into the ways of correcting dogs or punishing them. But the fact is, if we want to make a connection, wait a minute, just show them what it is that we want. And you can start from a distance with this.
Ich habe ja gerade einen Welpen und der hat vorhin auch gerade die Fernsteuerung durchgekaut. Und da war es dann auch so, dass ich erstmal genau hingeguckt habe und gedacht habe, ah ja. Und dann gehe ich hin und sage, okay, das ist verkehrt, gib ihr dann einfach etwas. Ich habe so Geweihe zum Beispiel, die sie gerne knabbern kann, gib ihr die. Und wenn ich das aber 2, 3 Mal gemacht habe, also ich hatte das jetzt zum Beispiel auch bei Kabeln, sie hat kein Kabel mehr angerührt. Also selbst auch wenn es ihr vor der Nase lag und so weiter, sie hat es einfach nicht mehr angerührt. Also wenn man sich wirklich nur darauf konzentriert, wie das gut wäre für uns beide, dann hat man es so viel einfacher. Also es ist wirklich, ich staune, wie schnell so junge Hunde, obwohl sie müssen in ihren Körper reinwachsen, sie müssen sich in diese neue Umgebung reinbegeben und so weiter. Aber wie schnell die all das kennenlernen können, wenn man sich auf das konzentriert, wie man es gerne hätte. Oder wie es dann halt natürlich auch für den Hund schön ist, ja. Also das ist ganz klar. Jetzt fängt sie gerade das Zahnen an und dann braucht sie einfach auch mehr zu kauen. Da braucht sie einfach mehr und das ist dann halt auch klar.
And it's so interesting when you talk about chewing on things. I can remember when the first dog I ever worked on, when I realized that we can work on the mouth, on the teeth to, to help them. It was in about 1976 or 7. And a friend of mine had just gotten, this was in San Francisco, where I was doing the summer training with Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais at the Humanistic Psychology Institute. And a friend of mine had gotten this dog, and she said, "Man, Linda, can you come over? Because I think he was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 months old, a big German Shepherd." And she said, "He's chewing everything, and I'm in a rented apartment." Not good. So I had never done mouth work on a dog before. That's one of the big things that we now know. We do it because it affects their emotions. But at the time, I had no idea why I was doing it. And so I just intuitively started, working on the dog's jaw on the outside, and then got into the mouth and really started doing on the gums, right on the gums, these little this was before T-Touch, just moving on the gums. It was before I got the circles, and just started really working this. And the dog hated it. I mean, thinking, "Oh my God, what am I doing to this poor dog?" Like he's not like this. And I just intuitively kept really working that. And I thought, man, that was wasted. And so I went home and I didn't think anything. And she called me the next day and said, "He hasn't chewed since." And then I realized, he's teething, and these teeth were really bothering him. And so of course he's chewing. And you can do it, I mean, yourself. If you have a toothache, while you're waiting to get to the dentist, you can disappear it with these little tips of your fingers on the actual gum. And we know that that's true. I've done it myself. And so it's really interesting. Now, what we later discovered, I'm trying to think, when did I do? Oh, actually, it was 1978. I had this idea that working on the mouth actually affects behavior, our emotions. And so I started working first on horses then, who didn't want to, who were not friendly. Horses who had tight mouths didn't want to accept the bit. Just because I had heard this in one of the lectures that we had from a Israeli neurologist about how if a newborn infant has some abnormality in the way they use their mouth or tongue, there's some dysfunction here. And so they were talking about how you can work the tongue and so forth. So I thought, what the heck, if I've got a horse who doesn't want you to touch their mouth and their distance, what would happen if I tried that? And I found that you could change behavior in a short time just by getting acceptance around the mouth. And with our dog people, I don't know, Katja, what you're finding, but over the years, what I have found, Suzanne, is that the hardest thing to do is to get even experienced dog people to find a way of getting their dogs to just accept just outside of the chin and just quietly, bring their chin into your hand and allow you to work over the face. So I found in a book called Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. I know this is in German also. In the second chapter, he talks about the connection to taste and to taste and smell to our emotional centers of the brain. And that made me realize, wow, how I can change in one session by getting this dog to trust, to put their chin in my hand and start all around the outside of your dog's face, just quietly, and be able to change their emotional balance. And with this work, we talk about balance, but not just physical, emotional and mental balance besides. So
Yes, and you wanted to talk about energy.
yes, I do. And I want, Katja, I'm going to have you tell a story. I'm sorry, and tell you how I see it differently today, what I did. And it's, of course, with Eve.
I didn't hear because they are so loud in the back. Can you repeat it?
So I want you to tell the story of Eve.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, of course.
Then
Ja?
I'm going to interpret what I believe was happening.
Ja. Also Linda hat auch bei meinen Hunden wahre Wunder bewirkt, ja, obwohl ich ja das auch schon ganz gut kann, aber so bestimmte Dinge, die akzeptiert man ja dann auch irgendwann. Also ich hatte eine Yorkshire Terrier-Hündin namens Eve und die hat mit 2 Jahren circa diagnostiziert bekommen, dass sie eine Luftröhre hatte, die so leicht instabil war und dementsprechend war ein Halsband also nicht mehr tragbar und Brustgeschirr wollte sie überhaupt nicht und so kuscheln, alles gut, aber sobald sie irgendwer irgendwie behandeln wollte, war es immer so, dass sie kam zu einem und man setzte sich zu ihr und sie setzte sich auch in den Schoß rein, aber du fängst an, irgendwas zu behandeln und sie drehte sich rum und zeigte sich von vorne und sagte, oh, wir können auch irgendwelche Spiele machen oder so, aber behandeln musst du mich nicht, egal wen ich daran gelassen habe. Und es war so lustig, weil ich war auf einem Advanced und Linda war die Dozentin und Linda sagte, du, wir brauchen gleich mal einen Hund, damit ich mal so eine Demo zeigen kann, wie man das beim Hund halt T-Touch macht und so. Und dann guckte sie auf die kleine Eve und ich sagte so, nee, die besser nicht, weil die mag nicht so mit dem Anfassen und so. Und dann dachte ich, oh Gott, wem hast du das jetzt gerade gesagt? Dann habe ich gedacht, ist vielleicht ja eine Chance. Ne? Jetzt war sie inzwischen schon 8 Jahre alt. Das heißt, der Hund hat seit 8 Jahren, egal welches Geschirr, und ich habe wirklich viele Brustgeschirre ausprobiert, also selbstgenähte und so weiter. Und immer wenn du das Brustgeschirr in die Hand genommen hast, hat er schon sich irgendwo versteckt oder so. Und wie gesagt, sie ist auch nicht mehr auf den Schoß gesprungen. Es waren so mehrere Sachen, die so zusammenkamen. Aber also meine größte Aufgabe war kein Brustgeschirr und kein Halsband. Das heißt, dieser Hund musste bis dato immer ohne Leine geführt werden, was ja nicht immer überall so leicht möglich ist. Deswegen wäre es schon schön gewesen, ein Brustgeschirr anzuziehen. Ja, und dann hat Linda gesagt, naja, dann. Und wir setzten die Eva auf den Tisch, Linda fing an, irgendwas zu machen. Ich kann es dir gar nicht mehr sagen und keiner weiß eigentlich mehr ganz genau, welche T-Touches es genau waren. Auf jeden Fall, es dauerte 30 Sekunden. Sie drehte Linda den Hintern zu und sagte, oh ja, bitte mach da mehr von, weil das brauche ich dringend. Und ich dachte schon, okay, ich kenne meinen Hund nicht wieder. Und Linda hat wirklich nur 10 Minuten oder so mit ihr was gemacht und geteetert und sagte, ja, ich glaube, das ist jetzt erstmal gut und setzt sie runter und ich bringe sie zum Auto und denke mir so, jetzt probierst du aber mal, ob du ihr ein Brustgeschirr anziehen kannst. Und es ist unklar, also wenn man das nicht selber erlebt hat, glaubt man das einfach nicht, weil ich setzte sie ins Auto, nahm das Brustgeschirr, was normalerweise schon zur Folge hatte und ich meine, das hat sie ja also lerntheoretisch hat sie das hunderte Male gemacht, dass sie, wenn ich das Brustgeschirr genommen habe, in die andere Richtung schon abgedüst ist, ja. Diesmal blieb sie einfach stehen, ich konnte sie anlegen und wir konnten damit laufen. Und ich habe gedacht, ey, was ist das denn? Der Hund ist auch plötzlich nicht mehr nur hinter mir gelaufen, der ist plötzlich vor mir gelaufen, der sprang mir wieder auf den Schoß. Und ich meine, die waren inzwischen 8, also ich meine, die hatte 6 Jahre lang all das nicht mehr getan und ich habe von Akupunktur, wir haben alles probiert, von Bioresonanz, wir haben natürlich viel geteetert, wir haben also alles Und ja, und dann kommt Linda, macht da irgendwas und wir können, bis heute weiß ich nicht genau, was es gewesen ist, aber so kann Tellington-TTOUCH funktionieren. Jetzt übergebe ich an dich, Linda.
Ja, I mean, das ist ein von meinen ganzen tausende Hunde, das ich getitelt habe. Sie kommt immer zu mein Herz. Und
Also du
the,
kannst gerne in Englisch reden, wenn du magst.
this is I mean, of all the dogs I've worked on over the years, you can't imagine how often I think of her. And you see, we have these 9 elements, the techniques, Suzanne, that you talk about, the 9 elements of doing the work successfully. And one of them is the 8th element is remember your perfection. And what I mean by that is remember, wow, that the phenomenal intelligence of the cells, this science based statement that every cell in the body knows its function in the body. And so when I look at Eve, I don't see her as a problem at all. I just and I've today I would say rather than for a dog, I don't say remember your perfection. It's like I see your beauty, I see you, and I see this amazing individuality with each dog. I see their individuality, their beauty. It's really simple. I see you. I see you. Yeah? And I don't see the problem. I don't even think about it. Something happens, and I believe that's the energy. And today, with quantum science, one of my favorite books that gave me these 4 words, this idea that energy, it's everything is energy, but it's also like every thought that we have. Every thought has energy. Every feeling that we have, every emotion, which is different from a feeling, and every belief we have. So, see, I didn't have that problem that Katja had. She'd already seen a lot of really experienced people try to get that dog to wear a breast thing. It wasn't my concept. That wasn't the idea. I just wanted to give her an experience of us together and let her feel her beauty. I mean, and I realized today, Katya, that's just pure energy. And actually, it's so interesting because there's 2 emotions, love and fear. So I can choose now can I manage to do this with the dog? It didn't even cross my mind. I just came from the beauty part, the love. Wow, look at this. I mean, she was she was such a wonderful little dog. And I don't care what they look like. I see their soul. Just and when I say I see it, I acknowledge that this is an individual. Yeah, it's really so. What I wanted to say, the thing that gave me this word is a book that it's called "Spontaneous Healing of Belief" by Greg Braden, and I just love the way he talks about in ways that we can understand the non-scientists can understand this concept of energy. And again, it's a book in German. If you look up Spontaneous Healing of Belief by Greg Braden, you'll find it in German, of course, also, and other languages. But it's really important to think, wait a minute, when we're with our dogs, every thought we have makes a difference. And that's why it's so important to do the heart hugs and ground ourselves first before if we want to do something. Just get connected with yourself first and the earth, and just feel the breath of the earth come into your body. Smile and think of something for which you're very grateful, because gratitude overrides the fear that, can I do this or not? Oh, my dog is going to, all the beliefs that we have. So hold it, and that the quantum science words, I believe, for success are this infinite possibility for whatever we need to do with them. So if you have a behavior that it's not working, instead of focusing on the behavior, say, what's infinite possibility for change? And that's where the T-Touches come in. So.
Ja, und ich möchte euch gerne kurz auch an dem Erfolg, den ich eben hatte, noch teilhaben lassen, weil ich hatte ja ganz kurz diesen lauten Welpen, den ihr ja zum Glück nicht hören könnt, aber weswegen ich hier teilweise ganz schön leiden musste, kurz auf den Arm genommen und nur zweimal eigentlich abgestrichen. Also wirklich nur ganz bisschen was mit T-Touch gemacht. Also ihr konntet es ja sehen, dann habe ich sie wieder runtergesetzt und seitdem hat sie sich hingelegt und schläft. So einfach kann das sein. Und es kann auch der Moment gewesen sein, der richtige, aber wir haben das so häufig, diese Erlebnisse, dass ich da an Zufall nicht mehr glauben kann. Sagen wir es mal so. So einfach kann das sein. Ja.
I love it. That's a really good point, Katja, that you made. It can't be just by accident that it happened, right? Because, and that's why, Suzanne, it's important when we're learning something to understand, wait a minute, we have all of these cases where this worked. And you have to hear those because you can't, otherwise you think, oh my God, like why am I doing these funny little circles? And it's so interesting, talk about intuitive, this work I have followed all these years because of an astrological chart that I bought for my 30th birthday. I saw an ad in the paper that said for $5 you can get an astrological reading about your life. And so I sent away for it, and I'm going to just show you this. Oops. Reach it. I should have grabbed it before. I keep it on my desk in this box because it affected my entire life. And Katja wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for this. So this is the thing that I received. And this is all mimeographed. I mean, most of you don't even remember what a mimeograph machine is. We didn't have faxes. And this is like 98 mimeograph pages. And the thing that got me was, in your lifetime, you will develop a form of communication that will spread around the world. Really? I had no idea what that could be. And in order to develop that, you will have to learn to trust your intuition. And today, I mean, I understand, I just followed that. And my intuition, the first definition of intuition I got was from our own library, because my first husband was 20 years older than I and a scientist and really smart. And he had this big library. So I just went to our library and just reached up and see what book my hand would reach. And it was a book that I opened, and I looked, and the definition was in the back of intuition. And it was 2 words: unlearned knowledge. Knowledge that you don't learn. Now, how I explain that in the quantum science, it's in the quantum field. Every thought that has ever been thought is here. It's energy. It's never lost. And we can learn to just listen to that. And another book that somebody sent to me, unfortunately, they didn't sign it because it changed my life. Actually, another book that has really affected my life. And that is, it's called Intuition. And the definition of intuition by this woman, Judy G, and her last name is Gee, is intuition is the manifestation of divine intelligence within you. It's within. It's in every cell in our body. And we just receiving these messages and understanding them will change your life and help you find your true path. And so you just start to trust your heart and your heart feeling, and the beautiful work of Heart Math Institute, which you if you're really curious about it, Google it and find out because they have all these wonderful talks all the time by the leading scientists and visionaries. And it's this concept that our heart has more capacity for intelligence than our brains. And so when we learn to come from our heart, from love rather than fear that we can't do something, um, it makes a big difference. And that's what I was doing with Eve. Wow, talk about a heart dog.
Ja, ich glaube, das ist ein total schönes Beispiel, oder ich bin mir sicher, das ist ein total schönes Beispiel und berührt mich total, was da passiert und dass es eben diese Geschichte oder diese Sache mit von Energie ist und du erzählst das so einfach und das ist es aber nicht. Und sondern man muss sich wirklich einlassen, man muss das Gefühl dafür entwickeln und vielleicht auch dieses Nichts wollen. Du wolltest nicht, dass sie ein Geschirr trägt oder du kanntest da auch nicht mehr aus dem Hintergrund von Eve, sondern du hast dich mit ihr einfach verbunden und hast das zugelassen, was, ja, hast auf deine Intuition vertraut. Das ist das, was du ja sagst. Und also mich berührt das total. Ich nenne meinen, also das, was ich tue, nenne ich Septemberhund. Und ein Septemberhund ist für mich ein Hund, der gesehen und gehört wird. Und da habe ich mich gerade sehr wieder drin gefunden. Also die Hunde sehen. Also ich sehe dich und ich höre dich, ähm, sind für mich wirklich so sehr wichtige Worte. Und mir kommt da immer ein sehr altes Wort. Also das ist Demut. Kennst du Demut?
No,
Ich weiß es nicht, was es auf Englisch heißt,
Nee,
leider.
ich auch nicht. Aber ich kann gucken.
ask Siri.
Ja, warte.
Also es ist ein sehr altes Wort und das berührt mich dann immer wieder.
Humility.
Humility. Yes.
Humility.
Ja,
Humility. Humility.
ja,
Yeah.
und da bin ich, ja, so in Demut zu gehen, wenn ich einem Hund zuhöre oder wenn ich ihn wirklich sehe.
Ich finde das gerade sehr spannend, Susanne, dass du genau diese beiden Begriffe wählst. Weil ich wurde hier vor einiger Zeit mal gefragt, was ich denn der Hundewelt gerne mitgeben würde, wo ich so denken würde, was können die meisten Hundehalter, egal ob sie schon Profis sind oder ob sie wirklich Anfänger sind, noch gut gebrauchen. Und ich finde, wir sollten die Hunde noch mehr spüren.
Hm,
Dieses Fühlen, das ist, was uns doch sehr verloren gegangen ist. Und ich verstehe total, was du meinst. Und wir meinen das ja teilweise damit, wenn
mhm,
ich wirklich sage, ich sehe dich. Weil eigentlich müsste es heißen, ich fühle dich. Und ich finde, da hat man über den T-Touch einen sehr guten Weg.
mhm.
Man auf eine sehr einfache Weise dahin kommt, den anderen tatsächlich auf diese andere Weise wahrzunehmen.
Yeah, thank you, Katja. That's a really good statement. And the thing is that when we feel them, this is where we can help them feel themselves. Because when a dog is ausfunzig, out of their body, like
Mhm.
they're unfocused, unwilling, not listening, how can we bring them into the body so they're grounded, connected to the ground, feel themselves? Because when they're afraid like this, like with Eve, she didn't feel her body safely, right? I mean, that's how I would interpret today. And so you've got a dog who's not focused, not listening. This is where, yes, we see their soul, but how do we get them to feel themselves? And that's what we do first. If they don't want to be touched, you can do from a distance, even if you can be close to them, even off the body. And like we just Katja had a poodle in her class that didn't want to be touched. And I realized looking at this curly hair, her boundaries are not her skin.
Mhm.
It's side of this unusual hair coat that she has. And if you recognize that, it's around them that you can give them a new sense of themselves. And then instead of one of the things I want to point out to you, why we have all these techniques, Susanna, we shouldn't in a beginning class, you should only learn maybe 3 of the simplest ones. And don't worry about which one. You just use whatever your hand says. What do you want? Try something. What works? What does the dog say? Oh, okay. Like you said, does it come into the hand or shrink away?
Mhm.
Now, why are all these different T-touches important? I didn't know it until years after I developed it. First of all, we had like what we now call the clouded leopard, where we use the pads. That was number 1. We had number 1 to 5. And then as I kept developing the work, I thought, wait a minute, I can't have more numbers. How do you remember all? Then you have to memorize these numbers, which part of the hand should you use? And the whole idea is, how can the dog best accept it? That's the part you choose.
Mhm.
So I was leading a group to Australia at the time. For several years, I took groups to different parts of the world, and we would have like 3 weeks together. So in the mornings in Australia, one of the group leaders, Marnie Reeder actually, was leading us in these beautiful movements, Tai Chi movements. And they had these beautiful names, the cloud and the horse, and these different names. And what she was teaching, and I thought, that makes a lot more sense. Let's give different parts of the hand names. And so we started to do that. And then just every different part that we used, we gave it a name. Like the back of the fingers, it's the llama touch, the T-touch, because I used it on the llama where the owner said, ha, and she was really, she's one of our most amazing international teachers now with llamas and with the T-touch. And she said, well, Mrs. Tellington-Jones, and she had watched me in a big presentation with horses at Cornell University. And she said, well, it's nice that you can touch the ears of a horse, but you can't touch my llamas. And I thought she was a really interesting woman, very tall and really big. And so I had a few days free, and she invited me to go home with her and see what I could do with these llamas. Now, I'd never touched a llama before, but they were, you know how these llamas are, and if they don't like you, they spit. I had to approach the llama in a way that wouldn't make it like want to spit at me. It's not nice. And so anyway, I just started with the back of my hand, and I was able to take the back of my fingers in my hand like this, and then go over the ears. And within 15 minutes, I was touching, sliding on this llama's ears. And when you do that, you establish trust. It's really interesting. And we did. So the thing is, we have all these different ways now. Like, for instance, I was at training at a dog rescue center in Oregon. And one of the participants said, Linda, I can't use my fingers because they're so stiff from the computer, from constant use. And I said, well, if you can't use like this contact here with the fingers, can you take the side of your hand like that? Because just try it on your hand, Suzanne. You can move the skin around like this, and it has the same effect. And so she did that, and yeah, she could use it. So I gave it the name that is the
Bananenschnecke.
banana slug. Banana slug. Don't ask me where on earth I got that idea of the banana slug. I have no idea. It's really quite funny, and she could do that. And all the different names came because somebody said, "Oh, and like, how did we get the chimp Dutch?" Well, that was with a young woman in her like late 20s in the UK who had a horse that was nominated for the Olympic, for the international team, dressage team. And so I was working with her horse who had a really sore back. And so I showed her the T-touches, but she could not do them because she said in winter her hands were so tight that she would be gripping the reins and then she'd have to open her hands forcefully. I said, "Oh, well, can you do that on the horse?" And she could. And the thing is, that was good for her hand because it actually got some movement here.
Mhm.
And and I had worked with chimps actually myself. And so this chimp said, "Oh, I want to be the chimp touch." So that's how we have the elephant foot and all these different names. And it doesn't matter if you remember the names. That's the point. So there we
Ja,
have it.
also ich bin gerade ganz fasziniert von dem, wie du erzählst. Ich könnte dir, glaube ich, stundenlang zuhören und mir würden die Fragen nicht ausgehen, die ich an dich habe. Ähm, Was für mich jetzt heute, also vielleicht so ein Stück befreiend ist, also in meinem Kopf, das ist, dass das nicht technisch ist, also dass das auf die Technik auch gar nicht so sehr ankommt, sondern dass es wirklich um diese Verbindung geht. Und das fasziniert mich grundsätzlich sowieso immer. Und das finde ich gerade sehr, sehr schön. Ist für mich für heute die größte Erkenntnis. Ich würde den Podcast gerne abschließen. Jetzt so, gibt es denn für dich, Linda, oder für dich, Katja, noch was, was ihr unbedingt noch mitgeben wollt auf den Weg, wo ihr sagt, das braucht es noch, um das rund sein zu lassen?
Tatsächlich würde ich gerne schon noch anfügen, dass wir mit unseren neuen Elementen, die wir bei den T-Touches beachten, auch schon sehr auf die Technik schauen. So ist es nicht. Weil häufig hast du tatsächlich, dass wenn du tatsächlich anfängst, diesen Kreis rund zu machen, dass die Verbindung auch nochmal eine bessere wird. Oder wenn du tatsächlich weniger Druck gibst, dass das plötzlich eine andere Beziehung wird zu dem Tier. Das wollte ich doch gerne nochmal anmerken. Ich finde halt Tellington-TTOUCH deswegen auch so schön, weil du kannst innerhalb von 5 Minuten etwas lernen und etwas wirklich massiv verändern. Also wirklich also was dein Leben verändert. Und du kannst es ein Leben lang weiter lernen. Und du wirst nicht auslernen, sondern du wirst es einfach ständig nochmal verbessern können. Und es macht auch so einen Heidenspaß, dazu zu lernen und zu merken, dass es wirklich nicht ganz einfach ist, einen runden Kreis zu machen mit der Haut. Und je runder der wird, umso mehr fühlt man sich noch wohler damit. Und das finde ich schon auch ganz spannend.
Yes, and I wish that we could say that in English. I just recover a little of what you said, recall. And this idea, there is a whole technical side to it. The beautiful thing is you don't have to know that to be successful,
Mhm.
but to know it gives you the precision. As Katja said, like if you think of the 1 1/4 circles as 5 arcs, like a little arc from the 6 up to the 9, this little scoop, as opposed to just kind of moving in a not thoughtful way. There's a lot of technique behind it. But you can take, I mean, I've had right on this shoulder, at least 24 years ago, I was staying with a friend doing a workshop at her place with mini horses. And I was, at the end of the day, I was staying with them and I was doing this to my shoulder because it was hurting me a little bit. And her 11-year-old daughter said, "Oh, is your shoulder hurting?" And I said, "Yes, a little." And she said, "May I touch it?" And with her little fingers, she did these little tiny raccoon touches, just the tips of the fingers around this spot. And I'm telling you, I can still feel it. Oh, after all these years, it's so interesting. And she didn't know any of the technical stuff that we've done with all of the studies we've done with brainwave studies and all.
Hm.
So I'm so happy that you get to see this little, and what I want to say, which is talk about intuitive. following my intuition. When I gave the animal names to these parts of the hand, I had no idea that at some point in the plant on the time, which happened about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, there was a beginning to talk about this idea that we don't have enough connection to nature. And when you think of, oh, I'm doing the raccoon touch or the chimp touch or the elephant foot, that we're bringing through the energy of just connecting with those animals, we bring that connection to nature into our bodies. So it's been a great pleasure. I really love talking with both of you in this way. And I hope that we have intrigued you, Suzanne, to now try some of these really simple without, however, just explore. I don't agree, use this or that for this time. Just what is interesting? What intrigues your dog? Ah, what intrigues you? What can I do?
Hm.
So,
Das ist das auch, was ich mit Technik gemeint hatte. Ich muss mir nicht überlegen, welchen Touch mache ich jetzt gezielt, sondern dass ich darin eigentlich frei bin, mich auszuprobieren und zu spüren, was tut meinem Hund gut und was tut mir gut. Ja, vielen Dank, ihr lieben beiden. Und ich freue mich sehr darauf, wenn ich dich, Linda, mal wieder in einem anderen Kontext oder vielleicht hier im Podcast nochmal begrüßen darf. Und auch dich, liebe Katja, dass ich dich mal wieder in einem Podcast oder auch vielleicht live mal sehen kann. Danke euch.
Danke dir.
from Florida, ciao.
Tschüss.